The Galactic Academy was one of the most advanced schools in the universe. It was a place where young minds from hundreds of different species gathered to study together. Here, insect-like students from the cold moons of Xeris sat beside reptilian scholars from the deserts of Tarak. Feathered beings from the high skies of Jorah whispered in soft voices, while machine-born intelligences hummed quietly as their processors clicked. Every corner of the academy was filled with voices, languages, and ideas. But on this day, the large training hall was quieter than usual. A lesson in battlefield medicine was about to begin. The subject itself did not sound frightening to the aliens. After all, healing was one of the noblest studies across the stars. Many students expected to see soft lights, advanced nanobots, and painless treatments. They imagined demonstrations of gentle touch and careful technology. Instead, the doors opened and a human walked in. The human was not a tall giant, nor did he glow with energy like some of the other species. He was simply dressed in the olive-green uniform of a medic, with a small bag slung across his shoulder. His beard was trimmed, his hair messy, and his eyes calm but sharp. The patch of his flag was stitched proudly on his arm. The aliens stared at him in silence. Some whispered nervously. They had heard the word before, Deathworlder. The instructor, a tall, crystalline being, cleared its throat and spoke in a voice that echoed across the hall. Today you will witness human field medicine. This lesson may disturb some of you, but it is important. What you see may save lives on the battlefield. The human stepped forward and placed his bag on the table. He looked around at the crowd of alien students. Many of them tilted their heads, blinking their wide eyes, unsure of what to expect. Then the simulation began. A holographic soldier appeared on the ground in front of the class. The soldier was human-shaped, lying on his back, clutching his arm, with blood flowing from a deep wound. Gasps filled the air immediately. Some alien students looked away, others leaned forward in curiosity. The human medic, however, did not hesitate. He dropped to his knees beside the hologram, tore open the sleeve with his bare hands, and exposed the broken arm. Without a second thought, he pressed on the bone, forcing it back into place. The sound of the snap echoed in the chamber. Several students screamed. One feathered alien fainted right in his chair, but the human's face stayed calm, his hands firm. He pulled a roll of bandage from his bag and wrapped it tightly, circling the arm again and again until the bleeding slowed. Then he reached into his kit, pulled out a metal tool, and tightened it across the wound, turning it into a tourniquet. The patient's vitals steadied instantly. The hall was filled with shocked silence. One insectoid student raised his trembling legs. That was violent! You broke it again. You caused more pain. The human looked up, his eyes steady. Yes, but if I had not, the bone would cut into an artery. The soldier would be dead within minutes. Pain means he's still alive. Pain can be healed later. Death cannot. The aliens shivered at his words. The feathered beings whispered to each other, their voices sharp with fear. To them, medicine was about comfort, about soft healing and painless procedures. They could not understand why a healer would choose to cause suffering. The human continued the demonstration. He poured liquid from a bottle directly into the open wound. The sound of sizzling flesh made several students gag. The injured hologram jerked violently, screaming in agony. But the human did not stop. He pressed cloth into the wound, tied it off, and lifted the patient onto his back. His muscles strained. Sweat ran down his forehead, but he carried the hologram to safety. When the simulation ended, the hall remained in silence. The alien students stared at him as if he was a monster wearing a healer's uniform. The crystalline instructor broke the silence. This is human first aid, brutal, direct, effective. It is survival, not comfort. The human looked at the class, speaking in a calm voice. Where I come from, our world tried to kill us every day. Our ancestors fought animals with claws, storms that destroyed villages, diseases that burned through our blood. We learned that survival is never gentle. On the battlefield, you do not have time for perfect healing. You only have time to stop death. If that means breaking a bone back into place, if that means burning a wound shut, then we do it. Because one more breath, one more heartbeat, means one more chance to live. The words hung in the air like heavy stones. Some students shook their heads, muttering in disbelief. A reptilian whispered, "This is madness." Another, with eyes wide, whispered back, "No, this is why they survive." The human packed his tools back into his bag, his movements slow and calm, as if he had not just terrified an entire classroom. For him, it was simply routine. For the alien students, it was a nightmare they could not forget. As the class ended, the insectoid who had questioned him earlier remained frozen in place. Finally, it spoke softly, almost to itself, "If this is only their first lesson, what else are Deathworlders capable of?" The question lingered in the room as the human medic walked away, leaving the students with a truth they would carry for the rest of their lives. Human survival was not gentle. It was raw, it was painful, and it was unstoppable. The Deathworlder's way, after the shocking first demonstration, the training hall stayed tense. Alien students whispered to one another, their voices sharp and filled with unease. Some of them were still shaking. The human's way of healing had looked like an act of cruelty to them. They could not understand how something so violent could be called medicine. The crystalline instructor noticed their fear, but did not intervene. This was part of the lesson. Let the Deathworlder explain. The human medic stood at the front of the hall. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He pulled his sleeve up to reveal scars running down his arm, thin white lines, burns, and jagged marks that looked like they had come from teeth and claws. The aliens leaned forward, horrified. "These are not decorations," the human said. "They are reminders. Every scar is a time I survived. On my world, the ground itself wants to kill us. Our ancestors did not have machines, did not have nanobots. We only had fire, cloth, and our hands. If a bone broke, we set it ourselves. If blood flowed, we pressed until it stopped. If a wound burned, we endured it until we could walk again. It was never about comfort. It was always about staying alive one more day." An insectoid student clicked its mandibles nervously. "But why cause more pain? Why not wait for healers or machines?" The human gave a half smile, though there was no joy in it. "Because if you wait, you die. Pain is a message, not the enemy. Pain says your body is still fighting. On a battlefield, there is no time for perfect healing. You act now, or someone does not live to see tomorrow." The room fell into silence again. The human walked to the holographic soldier still lying on the floor. He pointed to the arm he had wrapped earlier. "To you, it looked brutal when I snapped the bone back into place. But if the bone stayed broken, it would cut into the blood vessel here. That would mean death in less than a minute. So yes, it hurts. But the soldier breathes. Which matters more, comfort or life?" A feathered alien with bright red eyes raised her wing hand timidly. "But you poured burning liquid into the wound." It screamed. "That liquid kills infection," the human explained. "You do not see the tiny predators crawling on every wound, waiting to spread through blood. They do not scream. They do not show themselves. But they kill faster than any weapon. Fire or chemicals stop them. It hurts for seconds, but it saves a life for years," murmurs spread among the students. Some still shook their heads, refusing to accept this. Others leaned forward, beginning to see a different truth. The human lowered his arm and spoke more quietly now. "Humans grew on a world where everything tried to end us. Poisons, storms, animals with teeth longer than our arms. We learned early life is not gentle. The universe is not gentle. We trained ourselves to fight even when it hurts. To keep breathing, to keep moving, no matter what." The words struck hard. For many alien species, comfort was a way of life. Their planets had long been tamed, their healing painless. They had never imagined pain could be used as a tool of survival. The crystalline instructor finally spoke again. "This is why humans are called Deathworlders. They were shaped by hardship. They carry it into everything they do. Their way may seem reckless, but it works." One reptilian student raised his scaled hand. His voice was low, suspicious. "So you teach us to suffer? You teach us to hurt ourselves? That is survival." The human looked him straight in the eyes. "No, I teach you not to give up when it hurts. I teach you to act even when you are afraid. Because survival is not about feeling safe. It is about refusing to die when everything says you should." A hush fell over the hall. The alien students could see it in him, the scars, the calm, the certainty. He was not proud of the violence in his methods. He was not cruel. But he carried an understanding they had never known, survival at all costs. The insectoid student who had questioned him earlier leaned forward again, its voice soft this time. If pain is part of living, how do you carry it? How do you keep walking when every step burns? The human took a breath and answered with words that chilled the hall. We do not carry it. We fight through it. Because the moment you stop moving, the world takes you. And humans, we do not stop. The silence grew heavier. Some students lowered their eyes, shaken. Others watched him with new respect. For the aliens, medicine had always been about healing without hurt. For humans, medicine had always been about survival despite the hurt. Two worlds clashed in that moment, and the students understood why the galaxy feared humanity. The lesson was not just about first aid anymore. It was about the difference between species who had been sheltered and species who had fought for every breath. And in that hall, the aliens began to realize a truth they would never forget. Pain was not weakness. Pain, to humans, was proof of life. The air inside the hall was heavy. The alien students sat stiff in their seats, still shaken by the human's words. His lesson about pain and survival was unlike anything they had ever heard before. Some still whispered in fear, others stared in silence, their eyes fixed on the scars that ran across his skin. But no one dared to speak out loud. The crystalline instructor broke the silence with a sudden command. Now we will test what you have learned. A wave of light filled the chamber, and another holographic soldier appeared on the floor. This time, the simulation was more detailed. Blood pulsed from a deep cut in the leg, the breathing was ragged, and the skin already showed the pale signs of shock. The patient had minutes, maybe less. The instructor's sharp voice rang out. Who will volunteer first? No one moved. The insectoid clicked nervously. The feathered beings tucked their wings tighter. The reptilians looked away. Finally, one brave student, a tall avian with silver feathers, rose shakily and stepped forward. The avian knelt beside the simulation, wings trembling. He pulled out the Academy's advanced medical kit and activated a tool that hummed with light. Carefully, almost gently, he pressed it against the wound. Soft energy washed over the leg, but the blood kept pouring. He panicked, pressing harder, adjusting the tool. The vitals dropped. Within moments, the holographic patient went still. The avian fell back, feathers ruffling in shame. The instructor gave no comfort. Too slow. Too careful. The patient is dead, gasps spread across the students. A second volunteer, a reptilian with sharp scales, stepped forward. He hissed with determination and tried next. He applied patches, used tools, and whispered commands to the kit. But his movements were uncertain, his choices cautious. By the time he sealed the wound, the holographic soldier had already gone into cardiac arrest. Another failure. The class grew restless. The alien students whispered with fear and doubt. If their most advanced technology could not save the simulation, how could anyone? Then the instructor's crystal-like eyes turned toward the human medic. Now you! The human stepped forward without hesitation. His boots echoed against the floor as he knelt beside the fallen hologram. He did not reach for fancy tools or glowing devices. Instead, he ripped the uniform open with his bare hands. Blood gushed out in a spray. The alien students recoiled in horror, but the human pressed his hand down hard on the wound. The soldier's vitals steadied slightly. He ripped a strip of cloth from his own uniform sleeve, tore it with his teeth, and shoved it deep into the wound to block the bleeding. The holographic soldier screamed, twisting violently, but the human pressed harder. Stay alive, he muttered. His voice was low but firm. The class watched, frozen. Next, he grabbed a metal rod from his kit, primitive by galactic standards. With practiced skill, he tied the cloth tight, wrapped the wound, and pulled the rod across it to lock the tourniquet. The bleeding slowed to a drip. The vitals began to climb. Finally, the human leaned down, checking the soldier's pulse and breathing. He slapped the chest hard, once, twice, forcing air back into the lungs. The vitals leveled out. The holographic soldier was alive. The simulation froze. The room was silent. The instructor's voice was calm but heavy. "The patient survived. Why?" The alien students said nothing. Their eyes were wide, their throats dry. The human stood, wiping his hands on his uniform, and answered for them. "Because I did not waste time. Because I chose life over comfort. Every second matters. Every drop of blood matters. On a battlefield, you cannot wait for the perfect tool or the gentle method. You act, you fight, you survive." The silence turned into whispers. The insectoid clicked quietly, its mandibles shaking. "But you hurt him more." He screamed. The human looked at him with steady eyes. He screamed because he was alive. Silence would mean death. A feathered student whispered to her neighbor. It looked like torture. But another leaned forward and said softly, it looked like survival. The lesson had cut deep. They realized now why the humans had scars and why they carried themselves with such unshaken calm. They had been forced to act in ways that other species considered unthinkable. Yet those unthinkable acts were what kept them breathing. The crystalline instructor finally spoke. "This is the Deathworlder's way, brutal, direct. But in war it saves lives when nothing else can. You have seen the difference between hesitation and action. Remember it." The human looked around the room one last time, his eyes moving across every face. "Do not think of this as cruelty. Think of it as a choice. Would you rather suffer pain and live, or feel nothing and die?" The alien students did not answer. Some lowered their eyes. Others sat frozen in silence, their minds filled with the image of the human's hands, forcing life back into a dying body. When the session ended, the students left the hall in small groups. Their conversations were hushed and heavy. Many could not stop replaying the sound of cloth tearing, the scream of the patient, the human's calm voice. For them, medicine had always been soft, clean, and painless. But now they had seen a truth that shattered their beliefs. Humans did not survive because of gentleness. They survived because they refused to let go, no matter how much it hurt. And the alien students, shaken and humbled, realized that they had witnessed something terrifying, a human choosing life over mercy. Alien reactions. When the session ended, the training hall emptied slowly. Alien students moved like shadows, their voices low, their eyes darting as if the walls themselves were listening. The demonstration still clung to their minds, the sound of cloth tearing, the scream of the holographic soldier, and the calm face of the human who had refused to hesitate. Groups formed in the corners of the wide corridor. Some whispered in fear, others in quiet admiration, but none of them could forget what they had seen. A feathered avian with golden wings trembled as she spoke to her companions. That was not medicine. That was brutality. He pressed his hands into the wound until the soldier screamed. He poured fire into flesh. What kind of healer does such things? Her companion, another avian, lowered his head. "A healer who wins against death," he whispered. "You saw the outcome. The soldier lived, but at what cost?" The golden one snapped back. "We are taught that healing should bring peace, not suffering." Across the corridor, a reptilian student leaned against the wall, his scales catching the glow of the academy lights. He hissed, his voice sharp. "Deathworlders are reckless. Their methods are proof they are dangerous. If they treat their own kind like this, how will they treat us?" The insectoid student, the same one who had questioned the human earlier, clicked its mandibles in thought. "Perhaps that is why they survive wars. We cannot. We hesitate. They do not," the reptilian snarled. "Or perhaps they are too savage to see the line between saving and destroying." Silence spread between them. The words carried weight, heavy and uncertain. Meanwhile, in another corner of the corridor, a small gathering of students huddled closer, speaking in awe rather than fear. A young crystalline being, its body glowing faintly, spoke in a trembling voice. "Did you not see his scars?" He carried proof of what he said. "He has lived through pain, and yet he stands unbroken. There is strength in that." A mechanical intelligence joined in, its voice humming. The efficiency of his actions was undeniable. Every movement reduced the probability of death. Emotional discomfort is irrelevant when survival is at stake. The crystalline tilted its head. Irrelevant? Pain changes people. Healers should not cause it, the machine responded simply. Healers should preserve life. The human did exactly that. The group fell silent, each lost in thought. Back in the hall, the human had not left yet. He stood at the table, packing away his tools carefully, his hands steady. He could hear the whispers in the corridors, but he did not look up. To him, this was nothing new. He had seen these reactions before: shock, disgust, even fear. It always ended the same way. The others understood sooner or later why humanity did what it did. The crystalline instructor approached him, its voice like a ringing bell. They are unsettled. The human nodded. They should be. Truth is never comfortable. You have given them something they will not forget, the instructor replied. Fear, perhaps. Respect, perhaps. Time will decide. The human gave a faint smile, though his eyes carried no joy. I do not teach to be liked. I teach so they can live. The instructor inclined its shining head and left him in silence. That night, across the academy dormitories, the lesson replayed again and again in the minds of the alien students. Some dreamed of the screams, waking with their hearts pounding. Others lay awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering the human's words to themselves. Pain means you are still alive. The avian with golden wings wrote in her notes, her feathers trembling. Deathworlder medicine is cruelty. It destroys the spirit, even if it saves the body. The reptilian scrawled angrily into his datapad, humans are too dangerous. Their survival is madness. They must never be trusted fully. But the insectoid, quieter than the rest, typed slowly into his log. Perhaps we have been wrong. Perhaps comfort has made us weak. Perhaps survival demands more than we are willing to give. And far across the hall, the crystalline student wrote in soft, glowing letters, I saw strength in his scars. I fear it, I respect it, and I envy it. The next day, whispers still filled the halls. Some students walked faster when the human passed. Others avoided his gaze. Yet a few watched him differently now, not with fear, but with questions burning in their minds. For them, the galaxy had shifted. Medicine was no longer only about gentleness. Healing was no longer only about ease. The Deathworlder had opened a door they did not know existed, a door to a world where pain was not an enemy, but a weapon against death itself. The alien students were left divided, torn between horror and admiration, but one thing united them. None of them would ever forget what they had seen, because in that classroom they had not only witnessed first aid, they had witnessed the way of a Deathworlder, the lesson they will never forget. The academy's corridors felt different after that day. The students walked slower, their eyes filled with thoughts they had never carried before. Some avoided the human medic entirely, stepping aside when he passed. Others stared at him longer than they meant to, as if trying to understand what kind of creature could accept pain so calmly. But none of them could forget. In the silence of their dormitories, the memory returned again and again. The sharp snap of a bone being forced into place, the burning liquid poured into an open wound, the scream of the holographic soldier. The sounds echoed in their minds like ghosts. Yet louder than all of that was the human's voice. Better pain than death. Better a scar than a grave. The insectoid student could not sleep. It lay awake under the soft glow of its chamber, its legs twitching. It remembered how quickly its own attempts at healing had failed, and how easily the human had succeeded. A question haunted it. Would I have let someone die because I feared causing pain? The avian with golden wings still trembled with anger. In her private notes she wrote, humans are reckless. They break their own bodies and call it survival. They have no respect for life. But her writing hand shook as she pressed the letters. Deep inside, even she knew the soldier had survived because of the human's methods. The reptilian student sharpened his claws against the wall, muttering, madness, dangerous madness. But his scales itched with unease. because part of him admired the certainty in the human's eyes, and then there were the quiet ones, the crystalline, the machine and a few others who sat in silence, staring at their notes, unable to put into words the strange mix of fear and respect building in their hearts. The following day, the crystalline instructor gathered the class again. Its voice rang across the hall, calm and clear. You have all witnessed something rare. Yesterday was not simply a lesson in medicine. It was a lesson in survival. What you saw disturbed you. Good. Disturbance breaks walls. Disturbance forces you to see truths you wish to avoid. The students sat quietly. The instructor continued. Humans come from a world that crushes the weak. They are shaped by fire, storm, and fang. They do not run from pain. They use it. That is why their methods look brutal. That is why they succeed where others fail. Remember this well, for the day may come when you must choose between comfort and survival. And in that moment, you will remember what you saw here. The human medic stood beside the instructor but said nothing. His eyes moved slowly over the class, studying each face. He saw their unease. He saw their fear. But he also saw something else. Questions, curiosity, even a spark of respect. Finally, one small voice broke the silence. It came from the insectoid, quiet and trembling. Do you ever regret it? The pain you cause? The human's eyes softened, though his voice remained steady. Every time. No healer wants to hurt. But regret means nothing if the patient lives. I would rather see someone curse me for their scars than bury them without a word. That is the choice of a Deathworlder. The words cut deep. The students shifted uncomfortably, yet none of them argued. That night, the academy logs were updated. The session was marked as a breakthrough in interspecies understanding. The official record described it as a new perspective on survival medicine provided by human demonstration. But the words were cold compared to what the students carried inside. For them, it was not just a lesson. It was a scar etched into memory. Days turned into weeks, yet whispers continued. Whenever someone spoke of survival training, the human's name was the first to rise. Whenever they passed the medical hall, students glanced at the door with a mix of dread and curiosity. And for the rest of their lives, those alien students would remember the sound of bones snapping back into place, the hiss of burning disinfectant, and the calm voice that told them, pain is proof of life. Years later, when war swept through the galaxy, some of those same students found themselves on real battlefields. Under fire with comrades bleeding at their side, they remembered the lesson. They pressed down hard on wounds. They tied cloth with shaking hands. They forced themselves to act, even when screams filled the air, and in that moment they understood. The Deathworlder's way was not madness. It was survival. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. And those who had been there in that classroom on that quiet day carried the truth forever. When death comes close, it is the human way that keeps life alive.